The prophets were numerous. The first of them was Adam.
Lut,
Peace be upon him.
Ismail,
Peace be upon him.
Ishaq,
Yaqub. Peace be upon him.
Yusuf,
And when all sorts of incidents happened, and then Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala made his prophet Hizqeel die, Ezekiel, and then the children of Israel became idol worshippers, or among them there were. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala sent his prophet Elias. We're going to call him Elias. Some people call him Elijah. And Allah Ta'ala dispatched him to the people of Ba'labek, among the towns of what is present day Lebanon. The people today call it Baalbek. And they had an idol that they worshipped called Baal, very famous. That's known, it's even mentioned in the Bible. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, وَإِنَّ إِلْيَاسَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. And indeed, Elias is certainly among the messengers. إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ أَلَا تَتَّقُونَ. When he said to his people, why don't you fear God? أَتَدْعُونَ بَعْلًا وَتَذَرُونَ أَحْسَنَ الْخَالِقِينَ. You call upon Baal and abandon worshiping Allah, the only creator. We don't have to go into the meaning of Ahsan al-Khaliqeen. Allah Rabbakum wa Rabba Abaikum al-Awwaleen. Allah, you abandon worshiping Allah, your Lord, and the Lord of your fathers of old. But they did not believe in him. They didn't listen to him, except for a few of them. So Prophet Elias, alayhi salatu wassalam, he supplicated against them. He asked Allah to detain the rain for their blasphemy. And so they suffered a famine for 3 years until their livestock died and their trees died. And in the meantime, Elias himself, alayhi salatu wassalam, he was not in their midst. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala used to provide for him wherever he was. And the wicked people of the children of Israel, whenever they smelled the smell of bread in someone's house, they would say, that's where Elias is, let's get him. And then they would go there and they would harass the people of that house and do bad things. And it was said that Elias alayhi salatu wasalam, he said to them, to the children of Israel, if you abandon this idol worship, I will ask Allah to relieve you. So they got rid of all of their idols after praying to their idols and not getting any response. So they knew their misguidance. Then they went to Prophet Elias alayhi salatu wasalam, and he made dua to Allah, and Allah Ta'ala, he sent to them rain, and he sent to them ease and saved them. And he revived their land. But they did not stay steadfast on the path that Prophet Elias alayhi salatu wasalam clarified for them. So when Prophet Elias saw their stubbornness and their insistence on blasphemy, he asked Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to relieve him of them and to make him die. And so Allah Ta'ala answered his dua. فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَإِنَّهُمْ لَمُحْضَرُونَ. They belied him. And so certainly they shall be among the attendees in hell. إِلَّا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Except for the sincere slaves of Allah. وَتَرَكْنَا عَلَيْهِ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala left for Elias something that lasted through the ages. Salamun ala Ilyasin. The believers in heavens and earth saying, peace be upon Elias. It was said that he was buried in Ba'labak, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. And after him came another prophet from the descendants of Yusuf, son of Jacob, son of Isaac, son of Abraham. And he's called Elisha. Some call him Elisha with SH. Or they call him Elias. The historians, they said about his story that he was after Elias alayhi salatu wassalam. And he took care of the children of Israel as long as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala made him live, and he adhered to the way of Elias alayhi salatu wassalam. And after some time, there came a man. His name was Zakaria, son of Dan, son of Muslim, son of Saduq, whose lineage goes back to Solomon, son of David, whose lineage goes back to Judah, son of Jacob. He was a carpenter, and he was a high-ranking, pious man, and among those who had the talent of raising the people up, of instilling the goodness in people. That's not something that every scholar and every pious person can do. And he was among those who was in the service of the temple. And also among those who were in the service of the temple, and among those high-ranking pious people at that time, was a man named Imran. They said his name is Joachim. Some people claim that this Imran, his name is Joachim. But we're not going to call him Joachim. We're just going to call him Imran. He was the Imam. And that was at a time when there was lots of sins, lots of bad deeds happening among the children of Israel. And corrupt rulers had taken power among the children of Israel, spreading injustice in the land and doing very destructive things and committing great crimes. The children of Israel, they had divided into factions. Some of them were believing Muslims, following Islam, and some of them had blasphemed, and they perverted and distorted the religion, claiming that what they had was the truth. And so many troubles occurred, troubles that sometimes even led to the deaths of prophets. It was said that those Israelites had a stone that if they wanted to kill a prophet, they would take him to that stone and slaughter him there. At that time, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala made Zakaria a prophet. He gave him the revelation. You can call him Zakaria, and you can call him Zakaria with a Hamza at the end. With a Hamza or without a Hamza. Zakaria or Zakaria. They call him Zacharias or Zakaria. And perhaps some people might call him Zachary, Prophet Zachary. And so he called his people to the obedience of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. At that time when the unjust rulers were torturing pious people, persecuting them, and having no regard whatsoever for the prophets of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And the worst of these kings was one who's called Herod. And Prophet Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam, he encountered very hard time from the children of Israel. And he suffered at their hands, but he was patient. Until Allah Ta'ala made him an old man and his bones became brittle and his hair became white. ذِكْرُ رَحْمَةِ رَبِّكَ عَبْدَهُ زَكَرِيَّا. This is a mentioning of your Lord's mercy upon his slave Zacharias. إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ نِدَاءً خَفِيًّا. When he called upon his Lord with a faint call. قَالَ رَبِّ إِنِّي وَهَبَ الْعَظْمُ مِنِّي وَاشْتَعَلَ الرَّأْسُ شَيْبًا. He said, my Lord, indeed, my bones have gone brittle, and my head has ignited in gray. وَلَمْ أَكُنْ بِدُعَائِكَ رَبِّ شَقِيًّا. And until now, I have not been in my supplications to you, O my Lord, let down. And Prophet Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam, he was married to a woman called Ishya. Possibly Ishya is Elizabeth, but it could be another name. This woman Ishya, she was a pious woman. And also her sister, Anne, the wife of Imran. And once when she was in the shade of a tree, she saw a bird feeding its young. So she desired a baby. But she was an old woman. She had been unable to give birth. She made dua to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to give her the gift of a child. And she made a vow that they used to make in their Islamic law, to dedicate her child to the service of the masjid. That was that they used to dedicate their children to the service of the masjid, and those children would be in the service of the masjid until they reached puberty. Then when they reached puberty, they would be given the choice, and if they wanted, they could stay in the service, and if they wanted, they could leave. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala made her pregnant, but her husband Imran, he died while she was pregnant. Rahimahullahu Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And then she gave birth to her baby, and behold, it was a girl. Rabbi inni wada'tuha untha. Oh my Lord, I have given birth to her as a female. Wallahu a'lamu bima wada'at. And Allah knows best about what she gave birth to. She said, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنثَى. The male is not like the female. I made a vow to dedicate this baby to the service of the masjid. A male is more suitable for that because the female, she encounters menstruation and she encounters postpartum bleeding. And she said, وَإِنِّي سَمَّيْتُهَا مَرْيَمَ. And surely I name her Mary. وَإِنِّي أُعِيذُهَا بِكَ وَذُرِّيَّتَهَا مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. And surely I seek refuge with you for her and her offspring from the accursed devil. So then when Anne gave birth to Mary, she wrapped her up and she took her to the masjid and she put her in front of the rabbis, yani the scholars. Her husband was their leader, Imran, and among them was Zakaria. And they were in charge there like how the clan of Sheba keeps the key of the Kaaba. The sons of Aaron they were. She said to them, دونكم هذه المنذورة. She said, take this one who has been vowed as a dedication for the masjid. So then each one wanted to take care of her. Each one wanted to be the one, because she was the daughter of their imam and their master, their Sayyid, Imran, the pious scholar. And they used to do drawings to determine who would be the one to take the child and put the child in the service of the masjid. But Zakaria said, alayhi salatu wassalam, and he was a prophet at that time, I am most deserving of her because her aunt is my wife. But they refused that, and they insisted that they do a drawing. They said, let's go throw our pens into the running river. It was said that that was the river of Jordan. And whoever his pen floats, then he is the one who shall take her. So they went to the river with their pens that they used to use for writing the Torah. They tossed their pens, and it was the pen of Zakaria that rose up, and their pens sunk. So Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam, he was the one who sponsored her, took care of her, and he put her with her aunt, and he sought out who would nurse her until she got big. And then he put her in an attic. You know what's the attic? The attic. So it's that room that's up. You need a ladder to get to it. Like the door of it is in the ceiling. So he put her in an attic in the masjid. There's no way to get to her except with a ladder. And no one would go to her but him. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Whenever he would leave, he would lock that door behind him, and he would keep the key, and he would not trust anyone with it. And when she would menstruate, he would take her out to his house and let her stay with her aunt. And he used to notice from her the blessings. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala says, فَتَقَبَّلَهَا رَبُّهَا بِقَبُولٍ حَسَنٍ وَأَنبَتَهَا نَبَاتًا حَسَنًا. Her Lord accepted her with a good acceptance and made her grow up with a good upbringing. وَكَفَّلَهَا زَكَرِيَّا. And Zacharias, he sponsored her. He took care of her. كلما دخل عليها زكريا المحراب وجد عندها رزقا. Whenever Zacharias would enter in on her, he would find with her provision. He used to find with her fruits of the summer and the winter, and fruits of the winter and the summer. قال يا مريم أنى لك هذا. He said, oh Mary, where did you get this from? قالت هو من عند الله. She said, it is from Allah. إن الله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. Surely Allah Ta'ala provides for whomever He willed, even without that one exerting any effort if Allah willed. She was among the pious women and the very worshipful ones. She used to worship Allah day and night. She worshipped Allah until she became, as they say, a living legend. Her name became a proverb while she was still alive. She was a high-ranking holy person, a waliyah, a true saint, and she was a virgin raised in a noble house. She fulfilled her obligations and she did plenty of the optional deeds. She lived in the area of Jerusalem and she was so pious and so righteous that sometimes the angels would come and visit her. وَإِذْ قَالَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةُ يَا مَرْيَمُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاكِ وَطَهَّرَكِ وَاصْطَفَاكِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاكِ وَطَهَّرَكِ وَاصْطَفَاكِ عَلَى نِسَاءِ الْعَالَمِينَ. When the angels said, "O Mary, indeed Allah has selected you and purified you, and He has selected you over all the women in the world." That means until the end of the world. Allah made you the best woman ever created. يا مريم اقنتي لربك واسجدي واركعي مع الراكعين. O Mary, worship your Lord and prostrate and bow with those who bow. And when Zakaria saw from her what he saw from her, he desired a child, although he was so old. So he asked his Lord to provide him with a child, a pious child, who would inherit from him the knowledge, and who would become a prophet like him. هُنَالِكَ دَعَا زَكَرِيَّا رَبَّهُ. And there, Zacharias prayed to his Lord. He made a supplication. قال رب هب لي من لدنك ذرية طيبة. He said, "My Lord, gift to me from you good progeny, a pious child. إنك سميع الدعاء. Indeed, you are hearer of the supplication. وَإِنِّي خِفْتُ الْمَوَالِيَ مِنْ وَرَائِي وَكَانَتِ امْرَأَتِي عَاقِرًا فَهَبْ لِي مِنْ لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا." Indeed, I fear the tyranny of my relatives who would come after me and take charge of the children of Israel and spread corruption. And my wife is barren, so give me as a gift from you an heir. Not an heir in the usual sense, because the people don't inherit from the prophets. So not their money, and we already know also not prophethood. يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوبَ. One who would inherit the knowledge from me and be suitable to inherit the honor of prophethood that was put among the family of Jacob. وَجَعَلْهُ رَبِّي رَضِيًّا. And make him, my Lord, acceptable. And after Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam asked his Lord to provide him with a pious child, Allah Ta'ala sent the angels while he was praying to deliver the good news to him. يا زكريا إنا نبشرك بغلام اسمه يحيى. O Zacharias, your Lord says, "Indeed, we give you the glad tidings of a boy to be. His name shall be Yahya, John. لم نجعل له من قبل سميا. We did not give him before this any namesake." Namesake means someone who has your name. It means that according to that, no one before Yahya was ever named Yahya alayhi salatu wassalam. قال رب أنا يكون لي غلام وكانت امرأتي عاقرا. He said, inquiring, not doubtful, "My Lord, in what way shall I have a child while my wife is barren and I have reached of old age withering bones and stiffness of the joints. It was said that he was 99 years old and she was 89. So he was only asking, how would that be, O Allah? قَالَ كَذَلِكَ قَالَ رَبُّكَ. The angel said, so shall it be. Your Lord says, هُوَ عَلَيَّ هَيِّنٌ. That is for me easy. وَقَدْ خَلَقْتُكَ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَلَمْ تَكُ شَيْئًا. And I have already created you, and you were not previously anything. قَالَ رَبِّ اجْعَل لِّي آيَةً. He said, my Lord, grant me a sign. قال آيتك ألا تكلم الناس ثلاث ليال سويا. God said, your sign is that you shall be unable to speak to the people for 3 nights and days, although you are sound. So his not speaking to the people wasn't from an ailment. It wasn't from like being a mute or something. But it was a sign that Allah created in him. But if he wanted to mention Allah, his tongue would move with the remembrance of Allah by the will of Allah. And so instead of talking to the people, he signaled to them either by sign language or by writing. فَخَرَجَ عَلَىٰ قَوْمِهِ مِنَ الْمِحْرَابِ. And so he went out to his people from his prayer room, happy with the good news. فَأَوْحَى إِلَيْهِمْ أَن سَبِّحُوا بُكْرَةً وَعَشِيًّا. And he signaled to them to glorify God morning and afternoon. And then John was born, and when he became suitable to be addressed, يَا يَحْيَا خُذِ الْكِتَابَ بِقُوَّةٍ. O John, take the book of the Torah with resolve and determination. Study it well. وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَ صَبِيًّا. And Allah gave him prophethood as a child. وَحَنَانًا مِّن لَّدُنَّا وَزَكَاةً وَكَانَ تَقِيًّا. And Allah gave him compassion as an endowment. He was very soft to the people, and he was very concerned about them. And he was God-fearing. وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَيْهِ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ جَبَّارًا عَصِيًّا. And Allah made him good to his parents, and he was not a sinful bully. وَسَلَامٌ عَلَيْهِ يَوْمَ وُلِدَ وَيَوْمَ يَمُوتُ وَيَوْمَ يُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. And peace be upon him on the day he was born, and on the day that he dies, and on the day that he is resurrected alive. So Yahya alayhi salatu wassalam, he also grew up well, and he was very far from indulging in luxury. He would prefer to go to the barren lands and go to the outskirts and suffice with whatever provision Allah Ta'ala gave him. He used to eat from the bushes, eat from the plants. And he was very, very worshipful. And he used to cry a lot, like the people do, the pious people, that is. And he withdrew from the people a lot. And he would stay by the river banks. And being that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala made him a prophet as a child, then he was not like a normal child. So it was said that the children would come to him and say, "Come, let's play." And he would say, "We were not created for that." Mary had a cousin. His name was Yusuf. Of course, he's not Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. Joseph. He was a carpenter. He was a very worshipful man. And as time passed, he started noticing that she was pregnant. So he became confused. He saw that she's pregnant. So he said, well, how would she get pregnant? There's only one way she would get pregnant. But then when he would think about her, what he knew of her, that she's a worshipful woman, very pious and God-fearing, and not just that, but also a shy girl. She's not someone who would be with the men. He could not conceive that she did that. So he was confused. He didn't know what to do. So he stayed silent until he couldn't take it anymore. So he decided to talk to her frankly. He said, something's been bothering me and I want to talk to you. She said, be kind. So he said to her, tell me, would plants grow without seeds? She said, yes. He said, would trees grow without rain? She said, yes. He said, would there be a child without a male? She said, don't you know that when Allah first created the plants, He made them come out without seeds? And when He created the trees, He made them sprout up without rain? Don't you know that Allah created both Adam and Eve without a male or a female? Meaning, don't you know that Allah created Adam without a male or a female? And Eve, she's created from a male only, not from a female. Just to be precise. Not saying that that's the way it came in the hadith, but just to say it precisely and clearly. So Yusuf said yes, and when she said that, then he left her alone, with the meaning of he didn't think bad of her anymore. And it was said that he said to her, what happened? So she told him. One day, Maryam, she had to leave the masjid because of her menstruation, or for some reason that she had to leave. She left from her prayer place, her place of worship, and she headed east of Jerusalem. فَاتَّخَذَتْ مِن دُونِهِمْ حِجَابًا, and she took between herself and them a barrier. It was said that she wanted to perform a ghusl. فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا رُوحَنَا, and then we, meaning Allah, God alone, we sent to her our most elite angel, Gabriel, the holy soul. فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا, and then for her sake, so that she could bear and tolerate encountering him, he took the form of a well-shaped human. He took the shape of a beautiful young man. But when she saw him, she was afraid of him, especially that he appeared out of nowhere. So she started to back up. قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا. She said, surely I seek refuge with Ar-Rahman. So fear God if you are God-fearing. So Jibreel, he swiftly calmed her heart. قال إنما أنا رسول ربك لأهب لك غلاما زكيا. I am no human. I am but the angelic messenger of your Lord, tasked with gifting to you a pure child. She said, How would I have a child when no man has ever touched me and I was never an unchaste woman? قَالَ كَذَلِكِ قَالَ رَبُّكَ. He said, so shall it be. Your Lord says, هُوَ عَلَيَّ هَيِّنٌ. It is for me easy. وَلِنَجْعَلَهُ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ وَرَحْمَةً مِنَّا. And we do that so to make him a sign for the people and a mercy from us. وَكَانَ أَمْرًا مَقْضِيًّا. And it is a matter preordained. And so the angel Jibreel alayhi salatu wassalam, he blew a soul into her collar, and that soul went into her mouth and reached her womb. فَحَمَلَتْ. So she became pregnant with him. They differed about the length of her pregnancy. Some said that her pregnancy was only a matter of hours, that immediately her belly started filling up. Some said that her pregnancy was like a normal pregnancy, 9 months, and some said other than that. And then the news of Mary spread throughout the children of Israel. And of course, they thought ill of her, many of them. And so some of them, they accused Yusuf. And some of them, they accused Prophet Zakaria. And she was the talk of the town. She became very sad, very depressed. And so she left the people and she went away, far away, so that no one would accuse her of having a baby without a husband. فَانْتَبَذَتْ بِهِ مَكَانًا قَصِيًّا. And she went with him, with her pregnancy, to a far place. فَأَجَاءَهَا الْمَخَاضُ إِلَى جِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ. Then, when it was time for her to give birth, the contractions brought her to the stump of a palm tree. قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا. She said, woe is me. Had only I died before this and was just something abandoned and forgotten. And then she took hold of that palm tree stump and she gave birth. فناداها من تحتها ألا تحزني. And the angel called to her from below her, from a place that's lower than her place. So he called up to her. Do not be sad. قد جعل ربك تحتك سريا. Your Lord has made beneath you a stream. وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ تُسَاقِطْ عَلَيْكِ رُطَبًا جَنِيًّا. And shake towards you the stump of the palm, and there shall fall upon you fresh dates. That whatever she shook was dry. So when she shook it, Allah made dates sprout for her. And the angel said, فَكُلِي وَاشْرَبِي وَقَرِّي عَيْنًا. So eat and drink. Your Lord is helping you by that. And be happy with your new son. فَإِمَّا تَرَيِنَّ مِنَ الْبَشَرِ أَحَدًا فَقُولِي. And if you see anyone among the humans, then say, إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسِيًّا. Indeed, I have vowed for the sake of Ar-Rahman to fast. And in their Islamic law, they could fast from speaking. So that's the fast that she was doing. In our Islamic law, we cannot fast from speaking. It is invalid. He said to her, say, if you encounter anyone, I have vowed for the sake of Ar-Rahman to fast. So I will not speak today to a single human. And it was reported that when her baby was born, alayhi salatu wassalam, the idols throughout the earth were upside down. When the devils saw that, that frightened them and they didn't know what was going on. So they swiftly went to Iblis, the damned devil, and they told him about that. So he flew and he passed by a place where the angels were crowded. And so he knew that what had happened was because of the birth of this child. So he tried to draw near this child, but the angels would not let him. And when this newborn reached 8 days old, she took him to the temple to be circumcised, because that is the practice of the prophets since the time of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. فَأَتَتْ بِهِ قَوْمَهَا تَحْمِلُهُ. 40 days later, she came with him to her people in Bethlehem. قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا. They said, oh Mary, by God, you have done something terrible. يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا. O sister of Aaron, your father was not a man of misconduct, and your mother was not an unchaste woman. So they were harassing her, and she was silent until she couldn't take it anymore. فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. So she pointed to him, and they were insulted. قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا. They said, how would we speak to someone who is in the cradle as a baby? So then the baby spoke. قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. He said, surely I am the slave of Allah. He shall give me the book and make me a prophet. وَجَعَلَنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا. And he will make me a blessing wherever I am. That means he will make me beneficial wherever I am, and one who spreads the knowledge. And he will command me to perform the prayer and to pay the zakah as long as I am alive. وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. And he will make me good to my mother, and he did not make me a wretched bully. وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيَّ يَوْمَ وُلِدتُّ وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ وَيَوْمَ أُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. So may peace be upon me on the day I was born, and on the day that I die, and on the day when I am resurrected alive. ذَلِكَ عِيسَى بْنُ مَرْيَمَ. That is Jesus, the son of Mary. So Jesus, the son of Mary, alayhi salatu wassalam, there used to appear from him the blessings and the amazing matters. And the Jews hated him very much. And they incited their king, Herod, to kill him. So when Mary knew what they wanted to do and she feared for her son, she took him to Egypt. وَجَعَلْنَا ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ وَأُمَّهُ آيَةً وَآوَيْنَاهُمَا إِلَى رَبْوَةٍ ذَاتِ قَرَارٍ وَمَعِينٍ. It means Allah made the son of Mary and his mother, he made both of them a sign. And he made them settle on a plateau. That means an elevated land. So that elevated land, it was said that that is Egypt, or a place in Egypt. When he reached 7 years old, his mother took him to school. And anything that a teacher would teach him, he would understand it immediately. So Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he grew up there until he was 12 years old. And as you know, living at his same time was who? His cousin Yahya. And they met each other, they knew each other, and they used to hang out together. Jesus alayhi salatu wasalam, he would wear wool, and John, he would wear fur. And neither of them had a single golden coin or silver coin to their name. And both of them were homeless. So wherever the night fell upon them, that's where they would settle. Whether it was in a masjid, whether it was on the ground. And whenever they wanted to depart each other, they would advise each other with the obedience of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And Yahya alayhi salatu wassalam, he called the children of Israel to the worship of Allah with wisdom and with gentleness. And he advised them to practice the laws of the Torah. And he suffered at the hands of the children of Israel. However, this king, Herod, he used to like Yahya alayhi salatu wassalam. And he would invite Yahya to be in his sessions, and he would ask for his advice. This king, he was married to a woman who had grown old, and her beauty left her. So she was afraid of losing the luxury that she was living in. So she thought of a way to keep herself in the lifestyle that she was living. She had a very beautiful daughter. Her name was Herodias. So this young lady, she was the stepdaughter of Herod, not his daughter. And he liked her, actually, because she was so pretty. So her mother said to him, marry this daughter of mine. So he said to her, not until I ask Prophet Yahya about the judgment. So he asked Prophet Yahya, and Prophet Yahya alayhi salatu wasalam said, haram. He told him, no, you can't do it, that's haram. So he told the woman, Yahya said, that's haram. She said, who is he? Who is he to tell you what you can do and what you can't do? Just kill him. So she thought of a plan. She got her daughter all dressed up and all perfumed up. And she instructed her daughter to go into Herod and dance for him and to make him drunk and seduce him until he wants you. then refuse him until he gives you what you ask for. So she went in there and she danced for him and she made him drunk and she seduced him until he wanted her. And then she stopped. He said, don't stop. But she would not continue. He said, I'll give you whatever you want. She said, bring me the head of John on a platter. He said, anything but that. She said, that's all I want. So then he was conflicted. And the devil came to him and convinced him to go for the pleasure that was in front of him. He said, bring me the head of Yahya. So they went after Prophet Yahya alayhi salatu wassalam, a party of them, and they found him in his prayer and they slaughtered him and they cut his head off. And when they beheaded him alayhi salatu wassalam, his blood fell to the ground and started bubbling and would not stop bubbling. It would not calm down, and the earth would not absorb that blood. And the head of Yahya was carried to him on a platter. And when that woman saw that, she said, today I am happy. And so Allah Ta'ala, He punished that woman. Once when she went up to the roof of her house, Allah willed for her to fall down, and there were fierce dogs there where she fell, and those dogs pounced on her and they ripped her apart, eating her while she was looking. And the last thing they devoured was her eyes. Well, it was said that the students and followers of Prophet Yahya alayhi salatu wassalam, they took his body and they buried him. It is said that his body is buried in one place and his head is buried somewhere else, and Allah Ta'ala knows best about all of that. And then they went to Isa alayhi salatu wassalam and they told him, and so Isa was very, very sad alayhi salatu wassalam. When Yahya was killed, Herod also commanded for his father to be killed. So Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam, he fled from those people. Not out of cowardice, of course. He entered a garden and he was going through amongst its trees. And the devil was following him until he passed by a tree, and that tree called out to him, come to me, O Prophet of Allah. So he went to that tree and that tree split and opened up. So he went inside of that tree, and then the tree closed up while he was inside of it. But the devil took a piece of his cloth and held it, and then the tree closed up and a piece of his clothing was hanging outside of that. Then he took the form of a man and he went to the people and he told them, what are you doing? They said, we are looking for Zakaria. He said to them, indeed, he did magic on this tree, and the tree opened up and he went inside of it. They said, come on, we don't believe that. So he said to them, surely, look here. And he showed them the piece of his clothing that was hanging outside of the tree. So they took their axes and they chopped away at the tree, and they got a saw and they cut away at that tree, and then in the process they killed Zakaria alayhi salatu wassalam. So he also died as a martyr. And so there came to that land a blasphemer king. He's called Bukhta-Nassar, Nebuchadnezzar. He's one of the kings of Babylon. A woman came to this king and showed him the blood of Yahya. And so he saw that blood and he saw that it bubbles and doesn't stop. And then they told him the story. So when he heard that, he wanted to massacre them. And so he came to them from Iraq with a very powerful army. And they invaded the children of Israel. They killed many of them and they captured the rest, and few of them managed to escape. And he commanded his army to put their entire town under dirt. So the city became like a mountain of dirt. He killed 70,000 of them. After that, then the blood of John calmed down. And Bukhta-Nasr, he took his captives with him back to Babylon. And among them were some of the scholars of the children of Israel, those who were Muslims. And they had buried the Torah, an authentic copy of the Torah. They buried it before they were taken out of Jerusalem, in a place that they alone knew. And among them was one who is called Uzair ibn Sharkhiyah. The people call him Ezra. And this man, he was able to return to Jerusalem after some time. He was 40 years old, as it was reported. His hair was black. His stature and posture was good. And he had left his wife pregnant. أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها. In this ayah, Allah mentioned that one, Uzair, who passed by a town, which was Jerusalem, and its ceilings had collapsed, and the walls of its buildings had fallen in over those ceilings, and it was covered in dirt. He passed by that, he walked through that, he saw dead bodies, limbs, bones, and he was astonished, pulling his donkey behind him. And then he reached a garden or a field that was in the town, and this garden or this patch of land was lush with greenery and fruits. So he was even more mind blown that here you have these nice fruits and green, luscious land, and right here you have a town in ruins, dead bodies and bones and limbs everywhere. So he said, قال أنا يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها. Subhanallah, the one who has the power to revive this town and its people after it was destroyed. So then he took some of the grapes and some of the figs, and he filled his basket, and he squeezed some of the grapes, and he made juice for himself in a container. And then he sat under a tree in the shade, and it wasn't but a few moments. فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ عَامٍ ثُمَّ بَعَثَهُ. And then Allah made him die in the morning time and blocked him and his donkey from the eyes of the people and the animals and the birds. 70 years after he had died, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala sent an angel to one of the Persian kings. He's called Lusik. And the angel said to him, indeed, Allah commands you to get up with your people and to go to Jerusalem and rebuild it and what is around it. And so he did that. And whoever was left of the children of Israel, they went back there and they built that in 30 years. And then they repopulated that area. ثُمَّ بَعَثَهُ. Then Allah resurrected him. First, Allah Ta'ala revived his heart so that he could think and realize, because the mind is in the heart, not the brain. Then Allah Ta'ala revived his eyes so that he could see, and then he would see his body come back together again. So when he was alive and reconstructed, an angel said to him, قَالَ كَمْ لَبِثْتَ. How long have you been dead? قَالَ لَبِثْتُ يَوْمًا. He said, I have been here for a day. Then he looked at the sun to check the time, and he saw that it was Asr time and the sun had not gone down completely. So he said, أو بعض يوم, or I've been here for part of a day. قال بل لبثت 100 عام فانظر إلى طعامك وشرابك لم يتسنه. The angel said, in fact, you have been here for 100 years. Now look at your food and drink and see that by the power of Allah, the passage of years over that food did not change it a bit. وَانظُرْ إِلَى حِمَارِكَ, and look at your donkey. So he looked where he had tied his donkey, and he saw the decayed bones of his dead donkey. وَانظُرْ إِلَى الْعِظَامِ كَيْفَ نُنْشِزُهَا ثُمَّ نَكْسُوهَا لَحْمًا. Look at its bones, Uzair, how Allah makes those bones get up and come back to each other. And then those bones started just coming from wherever they were and reconnecting. Its legs and its ribs and everything. Then the head came and went to its place. Then the nerves and the veins started to grow over that, and the flesh and the muscle, and then the skin, and then Allah made the hair come out of it, but it was still dead. Then an angel came and he blew a soul into the nostrils of the donkey, and then the donkey got up making its noise. So when Uzair saw that, he fell down in sujood. فَلَمَّا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ قَالَ أَعْلَمُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. When he saw with his own eyes what he already believed in, what he believed in without seeing it prior, when he saw it with his own eyes, he said, I know that Allah has power over everything. And so Uzair, he rode his donkey back to his place where he used to live, and nobody knew him, and he didn't know anyone. People had died, people had been born. So he went to his house, and he found there an old, blind, crippled woman. She can't walk. She used to be a servant. When he left, she was but 20 years old. So he said to her, is this the house of Uzair? So she cried. And she said, oh, Uzair, he left decades ago and the people have forgotten about him. I haven't heard his name in so long. Yes, this is the house of Uzair. He said, I am Uzair. Allah made me die for 100 years. And here I am. He brought me back to life. So that woman was confused and shocked. She didn't know what to make of his news. She said, surely Uzair was a pious man. He was one who had an answered supplication. If he would make dua for a sick person or anyone who had a calamity, Allah would cure that one. So ask Allah to cure my body and to return my sight. So he made dua, and behold, Allah gave her sharp vision, and her face became shiny, and she stood up upon her own 2 feet, as if there was never anything wrong with her. And she said, I witness that you are indeed Uzair. And then she took him to the children of Israel. And among them were his children and his grandchildren. Their heads were gray, their beards were gray, or white like snow. Among them was who was 80 years old. Among them who was close to 50 years old. And among the people, some of them were his friends. They were so old. Their backs were hunched over. Their skin was sagging. So she called out among the people, indeed, Uzair, the one that you lost 100 years ago, Allah brought him back as a strong man. And so Uzair, he appeared for them, shiny, strong, fresh, like he's brand new, black hair, strong round muscles. But they didn't know him. But they still wanted to test him. So his son came to him and he said, my mother told me that my father has a black mole shaped like a crescent between his shoulders. Show us. So he exposed his back and he showed his mole. So they wanted to be extra sure. So an old man among them said, or maybe a big one, like a leader among them, said, our grandfathers told us that when Nebuchadnezzar attacked Jerusalem, he burned the Torah, and there did not remain among the memorizers of the Torah but few, and among them was Uzair. And so if you are Uzair, then recite to us what you have memorized. So he went, and they followed him to the place where they buried the Torah. And they pulled out the Torah from its place, and it was wrapped up in some rags, but some of its pages were ruined. So he sat under the shade of a tree, and the children of Israel were around him, and they were holding what they had of the Torah, and he started reciting for them. And they were following along with him, and he recited that Torah, one ayah after the next, one verse after the next, one verse after the next, without any perversion, without leaving out a single letter. He was a hafiz of the Torah. And so they started filling in whatever was missing from their copy of the Torah by following his recitation. And when they saw that from him, they just came up to him and started wiping on him and touching him. But out of their ignorance, they did not increase in faith. Rather, they blasphemed and they said, Uzair ibn Allah. They said Uzair is the son of God. Wal-'iyadhu billah.